At Vodacom Business, we see problems as an opportunity to get up and rise up. We're sure you do too. Whether you're starting up or settling in, problems are a part of the grind. Transform your small business with our connectivity, productivity, marketing, and financial solutions, and explore our free VHub ecosystem where you can learn, network, and grow. For digital solutions that turn problems into possibilities. Turn to us. Search Vodacom Business SME. Further together.
You're listening to a podcast from 702.
And
702.
World of Work.
I'm extremely excited to be joined by Zanele Luvuno. Welcome, Zanele. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much for having me, and nice to meet you.
Yeah, indeed. Likewise. We have a really interesting topic for discussion today, which is about climbing the corporate ladder and whether that is a poison chalice or not. I think so often we operate under the assumption that, the only way to success is through climbing relentlessly this corporate ladder. But suddenly when you get there, you realize that this might not be for you.
Absolutely. So we're seeing a lot more of that these days. We're seeing a lot of guys that have made it to the top, middle management, C-suite, some of the C-suite guys, and they've made it to the top, and they're suddenly turning around, they're looking at their lives, and they're wondering, what is it that I'm doing here? So all the frustrations that come with that, the frustrations that come with being in positions of leadership, the frustrations or the challenges rather that come from having to operate at a C-suite level, managing people, dodging the politics. Can you ever price enough for that? And certainly we're starting to see more and more people. I mean, a lot of the research actually says only a third of people ever want to get to the top. And by that, I mean get to a management position in life. And less than 10% of those people are actually interested in making it all the way to the C-suite. So we've actually got a whole lot of people sitting in a C-suite level in organizations wondering, what am I doing here? Do I want to be doing this? Or I'm here, but I feel stuck. I'm boxed in, I'm closed in, or whatever it may be. And wondering kind of what is the next step and what do we do from here?
And are you seeing that a lot in your work at Transcend Talent Management? What are the kinds of stories that you confront where people are actually where they thought they wanted to be, but they actually realize that after all, it's not exactly where they want to be now?
So I think that it happens a lot with women. I see a lot of those struggles, especially with black women. It's you kind of. We've always measured success that way, like you said. So I think it came with the sort of baby boomer generation. And if you wanted to be successful, you started in the mailroom and you worked your way all the way to the top, and you spent 30 years in the same company, and then you became the CEO. And as human beings, you know how we are. We like to just adopt patterns, and there's very little mindfulness around actually, well, what does success mean to me? So we all kind of enter into the matrix, right? You come into the system and the system says, go and study this, and then go and study further, and then go study another thing. And then you go and get a nice job in a nice corporate, and preferably they're listed, and then you work your way to the top, and you get, and that is kind of the definition of success. So we all tend to, I'm finding a lot of women, like I said, have kind of fallen into that. And getting to the top and starting to think back, and, you start to reflect on other areas of your life, I think, and you start to reflect on, like I said, do I even enjoy managing people? Do I even enjoy sitting in management meetings? Do I want to read board packs? Do I want to do all of these things? Or do I actually want to come into work, do what I do it really, really well, be rewarded for it? So the recognition comes in the being rewarded for it, but actually go home and spend time with my family, or spend time with my friends, or perhaps I have other interests. Millennials are very good at that, right? We call it job hopping, but actually they're looking for purpose. So they're like, I've tried out here. No, like it's not kind of hitting the spot. You know, I'm going to go work here for another 6 months, and well, no, that's not quite hitting it either. And so they're not scared to just kind of like up and move to the next thing. Or say, actually, you know what, I'm a little creative, you know, so maybe I don't want to just do one thing. Maybe I want to gig and do my core piece. But the older you get, the more difficult it becomes. I mean, there's responsibility that you kind of tie yourself into. But I think a lot of it comes with exactly that. It's like suddenly I'm at the top. It's what success is meant to be and what it's supposed to look like. But you still have some like huge dissatisfaction in terms of where you're currently finding yourself.
I think that's a really interesting point because, you know, there's been a lot of conversation globally and locally about the way that gender and the way that women are seen in corporate life actually doesn't allow for a smooth transition, a smooth elevation through the ranks. And essentially the oppression of women in society is, of course, mirrored within the workplace.
Absolutely.
And so, particularly for women listening, how do you feel that this question of attempting to ascend within the corporate world is held back by some of the backwards social practices that happen within the corporate world?
Look, so I think we all definitely agree. So, you know, the corporate place is just a mirror of what happens in the greater group consciousness and greater society. You find that a lot of corporate structures, especially at the top, are probably male dominated, probably white male dominated at that, just to say. And so I don't think it's necessarily a conscious thing, but as human beings, we all have a lot of affinity bias, right? So we do what we know, right? So you'll find that the rules, the policies of an organization mirror the policymakers, right? So if you have an organization that has got an all-male board, you'll find the likelihood of their maternity leave policy is potentially very thin.
Sure.
And not in full comprehension of the complexities of a woman who has to incorporate having a child into her everyday life and still want to be successful. So absolutely, I think, but like I said, I don't think it's necessarily malicious. It's just in life, we all do what we know. So if the top structures of an organization are reflective of a certain demographic, then you'll find that the policy and the culture of a particular organization will be the same.
And how would you advise people who maybe feel that they're in this position that, you know, they've done everything right, they've ticked all the boxes, suddenly they are now advancing, but they're starting to realize that the promise is not everything that they thought it was?
Phew, I don't want to ruin people's careers. I don't want to ruin people's careers. So, I, you know, obviously treading with caution, but, you know, I'm also a coach. So my coaching is very much driven by encouraging people to get to their truth, right?
How do you go about that? That's quite like interesting.
That's a whole other session. But I think it's very important to understand and have a sense of knowing and a sense of self. Then when the decisions you make and the things you contemplate about in your life come from that sense of self, an understanding of self and a sense of truth, you tend to always then make the decisions that are right for you.
Right.
So if you're saying, I'm at the top, I've made all the right moves, but jeepers, being CEO is the next move. There's 5 of us, and now they've just put somebody ahead of me, or like they've just made some other person my boss, and your dissatisfaction keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. I think it's important that you step back as a person, and there are so many tools that are available. I mean, I've discussed coaching as potentially one of them. the right mentorship. But I think it all starts with really getting a sense of self and a sense of understanding around what does success mean for you. So you've ticked all the boxes for somebody else's version of success, right? And perhaps that's why it's still creating the gap, and it's not giving you what it is that you think that you ideally want in terms of your life. So it's important for people to be able to step back and really define what success means for them. Like I said, is success coming to work, doing what I'm doing it really, really well, and then pricing appropriately for that, versus the only way I can get the big price tag is if I'm managing people or in a leadership position. Let's look at what I do on a value basis. And then the other components of what success means for me may be that I enjoy writing and I want to go and explore that part of my life. I enjoy spending time with my family. I want to travel. I've got other areas of interest, or I like doing different things. So your success could come from a combination of things, and not necessarily that it is that I need to be in one place, doing one job for a particular organization. So I think but it all comes from that sort of sense of stepping back, stepping into yourself and saying, what is success for me as an individual, and blocking out sort of all the noise, and understanding what that is, and then making decisions from that place instead of what has kind of been prescribed to you from society, I think.
Also, just thinking about this from the perspective of young graduates, because there's a lot of marketing that goes into presenting your career path in a certain way when you're at university, a lot of pressure to, join the high profile firms.
Right.
And then people even start within these firms and suddenly realize just how much is demanded, how much is expected, which was conveniently left out of that glossy brochure.
Yeah.
What about when you begin your career and set yourself on a trajectory? What are the important questions to ask so that you don't find yourself at that moment where you think you're getting something you want and realize it's not that?
I mean, I think it's almost easier if you do it earlier on in your career, because then you can grow in the right direction, right? In our particular business, so we're very AI tech focused in terms of how we work. And when we work with youngsters coming into graduate roles, and we work with youngsters kind of coming into sort of like entry level opportunities, even like with bursary schemes and that kind of thing, we insist everybody does our assessment, right? So we have a pre-assessment, and our pre-assessment tests, right? Not based on sort of self-assessment, right? But really based on sort of like science, like solid science, like behavioral sciences, neurosciences, epigenetics, whatever it is. How do I fare in relation to the things I think I want to do? And what am I actually a good match for? And it kind of drops people into buckets. So you, Sizwe, think you want to be a robotics engineer, but your brain's not quite so analytical. I'm just giving an example.
Are you reading my reports or something?
But you'd actually do better in an academic type of an environment, and so maybe careers related to academia, or careers related to different sort of competencies, behavioral competencies. So we actually insist our guys do that at the bottom, up front, so that we're putting people into opportunities that are not just kind of, and it's not always because society says. Sometimes my son insists he wants to go to law school. I've asked him 1,000 which ways. Why? What is it about the law that makes him want to practice law? And he's convinced it's his passion, but do we interrogate the why? So being able to find some kind of scientific way or methodology to test, right, that particular thing is incredibly helpful. Remove the human bias and use one of the many mechanisms that are available. Take the time and actually test yourself. And we grow and we evolve as human beings. So do it regularly, or often self-test. Often test, where am I in relation to what it is that I aspire to and where I want to be. I mean, I can think of nothing worse than being in a C-suite of a listed business and all you actually want to do is get out or move forward, but forward's just not an option for you because there's somebody else there, or the opportunity is just not available, and you're sitting and you're thinking and you're like, what do I do and what happens next? And then you're just sitting there. And it's like 1 year becomes 2, becomes 5, becomes 10. And there's a lot of that type of thing going around. But if you had a greater sense of self, related to what that success looks like for you, then you, I think, are setting yourself up, to go down a path that can lead you there, but in various ways.
And I guess one of the big fears to come to, people later in their careers. So, we've looked at, starting your career, but as you say, now you're later in your career, now you're in this place. You've actually finally got there. And you're like, is this actually where I really want to be? I guess there's a fear that changing course is some kind of symbol of a failure.
Absolutely.
And a fear that, a loss of prestige might influence your life. And I guess people grapple a lot with those kinds of questions.
Absolutely. And I also think, though, that what you want changes, and that's okay. I may have had a vision to join a big listed and or to build XYZ within this massive corporate environment, and I go in there and I do a thing, and 5 years in, maybe I've actually achieved that, and because I did well, so I did well because the intention was there. I went in with this great vision and I went to go do my thing. 5 years in, I maybe, I've done everything I wanted to do, but then I just stay, right? Because I did so well, I get given another opportunity and another opportunity and another opportunity. And there's no self-check. Is this still aligned to why I'm here, right? And that's very often what happens. You come in, you shoot the lights out, you do well, and then they just start, promoting you, do this, giving you all these opportunities, and you start the big climb. But actually, and then you kind of look back and you're feeling dissatisfaction and you can't work out why. But actually, the reason you're really feeling dissatisfaction is because the reason you were there and what you wanted to achieve in that environment you achieved 5 years ago. And then you just stayed without that same self-check that landed you there in the first place, if that makes sense at all. So yes, you don't want to lose face. You don't, but I think it's perceived.
Absolutely.
If you're doing something which is aligned to your passion, if you're doing something which is aligned to your version of, what you think success looks like for you, or what your best version of yourself is, you will always be successful. And so success can take different shapes. It can take different forms. Think of how many stories we read about people that stumbled into success, and they always did this one thing, which was kind of their career path and their career trajectory, but they actually found success in something completely different, something attached to them making a decision around pursuing what was authentically themselves.
And what is the role of coaching for someone who's in a place like that? Because I think often when people get to the top, when they're in that C-suite, they come to rely on their own judgment to a large extent because they often feel as though that's what's brought them the success. And it can be hard to try and seek the support or the advice of another.
Very true. So it's easier to coach somebody sort of on their way up than it is at the top. The higher up you get, probably the more independent you are as a person. So you used to relying on self, relying on your own judgment to kind of get things done. Also, I think there are sometimes perceptions where people think that if I do go into coaching, I will perceived to have weakness. So in a tough corporate environment where I'm treading on glass every day, political landscape, etc., if I now go out and I seek coaching, it can be perceived weakness. So you don't want to show weakness in any type of environment. But the truth is, CEOs of listed organizations, captains of industries the world over are in coaching. And coaching isn't necessarily saying there's something broken in you, but it's not your core competency. Allow somebody else. In the same way that when your sink is broken, you call a plumber because you don't know how to fix sinks. You know what I mean? It's not your core competency. Coaches have a particular toolkit, which is not your toolkit. You didn't go to school for it. You didn't study it. Allow somebody who's got a particular toolkit to come into your life, dump those tools in your life so that they can help you work with a particular stage that you're in your life, or a particular challenge, or a particular dilemma, or whatever, a particular trajectory, whatever it may be. Yeah, we don't try to fix our own sinks. I don't know why sometimes we try to be our own coaches, our own doctors, our own this and our own that. It's really the same principle.
And it's so weird how like asking for help is seen as the sign of weakness in the cutthroat corporate life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really not. I think quite contrary, it's an opportunity for growth. Imagine gaining a whole basket of tools that you actually never had access to before that can help you navigate so many other things. And sometimes we think that the coaching is just to assist us in particular situations, or our intention is to coach a particular problem. But when you receive coaching, you actually coach a person. So you actually receive tools that can translate into the rest of your life. And so many of the challenges we have at work are mirrors of a lot of the other stuff that is going on in other aspects of our lives anyway. So go out, get yourself a toolkit, and see how it can add value.
Absolutely. We've been talking about reaching or feeling as though you've reached a ceiling in your world of work, and where you go from there, how you take that next step, either into transitioning into something different, or trying to find what the purpose behind not just getting the job, but actually doing the work is. And we've been joined by Zanele Luvuno, who's been helping us through navigating what that feeling is like. Remember that World of Work is brought to you by YES, the Youth Employment Service. Getting youth to work is everyone's business. Visit yesforyouth.co.za. Zanele, thank you so much for helping our listeners through the difficult process of thinking you're somewhere where you want to be, but realizing you want to be somewhere else.
It's an absolute pleasure.